Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to our next episode of Masters of the Product. Our topic for today is PMs and AI and agents, and how PMs can use AI and agents for the future of their work. To help us with that discussion, we actually have Chris Butler. Chris and I actually met a few months ago on dinner, and then after the conversation we had, I'm like, you know what, Chris, we have to have you on the show. So glad you're here. But Chris is director. He's director of product ops at GitHub, and he brings over 25 years of experience spanning product AI leadership, design strategy, and emerging innovation in tech. As for me, I'm your host, Mustafa Kapadia. I help product organizations figure out how to use AI so they can be more effective and efficient. You can learn more about me and my services at echo-point.com. Chris, welcome to the show. I'm so glad we finally were able to do it. And thanks for being patient. I know we had a few dates, but I'm just happy you're here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. I'm excited about the conversation.
So, Chris, before we actually jump into product managers, AI, and agents, let's talk about a little bit of you, if you don't mind.
Yeah.
I know that you're that you have a role at GitHub, which is owned by Microsoft. I'm curious what you're doing there right now, please.
Yeah, absolutely. So, kind of for the previous time at GitHub, I was really focused a lot on operations, product operations specifically for Copilot within GitHub. So, kind of almost any of the stuff to do with AI. And a lot of that was trying to help both the product leaders and the product managers really be as effective as possible at their roles. I would say kind of April of this last year, we formed a new team called Synapse inside of our operations team, which we call it EPD operations now because it's about engineering, product, and design operations, not just product operations. But this team is really, our mission is to reduce toil for these EPD teams that exist within GitHub. And we do a lot of that by trying to create like helpful process automation that also leverages AI. And maybe a little part of our mission is also to think about kind of the speculative work of how does an EPD team's work change as we adopt AI agents, any of this type of technology into the day-to-day work that we do. But it's really to try to, when we talk about toil, I end up using a definition that comes from kind of what's it like DevOps and security related stuff. Yeah. And so it really is about like repetitive, manual, tactical work, things that kind of take up people's time, but doesn't really add to the strategy or the benefit of the teams. And so that's a lot of what we're trying to remove is really this like boring, tedious work that people have to do. A lot of the time it's about communication flows within the organization. But that's where kind of like I'm focused on right now at GitHub. But previously I've worked at, the places you would have heard of would have been Microsoft a very long time ago, Waze, Kayak, Facebook Reality Labs, Google, and the core machine learning team. But maybe since about mid 2010s, I've been thinking a lot about just like we talked a lot about machine learning back then. Now we're talking about AI and agents, but it's really a lot of the time it's how do we start to make technologies that are say non-deterministic or harder for people to understand why they're operating the way they are, and how do we help them kind of build useful mental models to engage with them. And so I also worked at like a small design consultancy about this type of work.
Nice.
That's kind of.
You make a great point because the challenges or the problems remain the same. It's just a matter of how the different technologies are used to go and go about solving those problems, right?
Yeah. What are the new capabilities that this technology allows us to do? And how do we now leverage it to help people
100%.
make better decisions, 100%. Work with each other more effectively, and basically ship successful products?
Yeah. Well, this is great because the topic you're talking about is very close to my heart too, because that's exactly what our clients ask us to do, right? Is to figure out how to make their PMs more efficient, which comes back to the toil piece, and then more effective, which comes back to what you just said earlier, which is really about better decisions, more innovation, better quality artifacts, you name it, right?
That's right.
I'm curious. I know you gave a high level overview, which I think is good. Can you get more specific as to what are some of the things you're doing at GitHub in which you're trying to reduce toil?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that really kind of caused the creation of this Synapse team was a little side project that we had inside of GitHub called Bloom, which was really about this idea that PMs, they tend to operate alone a lot of the time early on in the project when they're
Yeah.
kind of creating initiative documentation or a PRD or a spec or something like that. And they don't really have access to a lot of feedback because they're actually worried about, say, reputational risks of their
Yes.
team, of their leaders, things like that. And so we were thinking about how do we get them early feedback on that. And then also part of the toil aspect of this is that they also then have to generate a bunch of different documents for downstream teams, for partner teams, for compliance
Yes.
teams. And
Yes.
so how do we help them kind of auto draft this? And so one of the first things we did, kind of again as like a very small project on my side, was how do we, we have a public roadmap that we end up publishing in GitHub about GitHub. And so to be able to write this type of public roadmap item, though, it's like a very particular style of writing. We want to write like a value proposition and a customer outcome. But people don't always like, especially PMs, when they have to do
It's
something
not
like this.
intuitive. Yeah.
Yeah, it's not intuitive. It's not the top of mind for them. Like they're worried about shipping the product and making it as good
Yes.
as possible. And so one of the things we did is we took, we had to publish something like, I think it was like 17 or 18 roadmap items from Copilot. And I took all the available documentation, used some prompting to then auto generate drafts. And what we found was
Okay.
that I think it was in the range of like 70 to 80% of them that were drafted after being reviewed by PM, there was either like very minor kind of edits or no changes because it actually
Perfect.
met the needs of that thing. And so this helped us inspire us that now there's like this possibility of using things like LLMs to
Yes.
help auto draft this type
100%.
of document and to basically get past this like blank page.
Yeah.
I'd say one of the things that's maybe been most beneficial though that we've been shipping internally and we're potentially going to open source this is really around kind of status reporting for teams. And so usually this impacts like product managers, TPMs, engineering managers that are inside of a hierarchy where they need to now like publish what is going on with their team. What decisions are they making? How do we kind of help transmit the knowledge to our senior leaders about what they need to know? Do they
Right.
need to get involved? And so we've created an internal system that will look at a particular project view inside of GitHub. It will try to pull all of the different content from those different issues that have been updated recently. And this is actually a hard problem, by the way. There are a lot of things that we're doing to try to make that easier inside of GitHub, but like it's not something that is very
Right.
easy to do. It's a lot of manual work. And then we've used a combination of basically like prompts plus templates to then auto-generate a bunch of different styles of kind of status reporting drafts that people can then edit and then
Right.
use. And so in that particular case, we're talking about a time savings, for some of the people that are more hands-on with the way they want to they want to do these types of status updates, it's in the range of 15 to 30 minutes a week. But for others, it's like hours of time that they have
Yeah.
to scan through.
It ranges
potentially
by
like
how
tens
much
or
time you
hundreds.
put in. Yeah.
That's right.
100%. Yeah.
And the benefit there is that's really interesting is that we don't want to take away the part of how is it that this person that is actually managing the team's work, right, like a TPM or a PM, we don't want to take away the fact that they are learning about what is happening inside the team as part of this exercise, but we do want to help them kind of remove all of the toilsome work, which is collating all this information, auto drafting it. And what this really is about is this is really about communication flows, right? Because what the team wants to do is they want to provide information to a senior leader so that senior leader actually understands what's going on, that they trust in the decision-making process of the team, and then should they preemptively kind of get involved? Are there escalations that they need to get involved in? But that shaping is actually very much a human activity.
100%.
So it's about finding the right way to like leverage the best parts of the machine and then leverage the best parts of the human inside the team. And that's
I
making
like
something
the
that's been
use
really impactful.
cases. I like the use cases you're talking about because in many ways, AI is a fantastic translation machine. And I'm not talking about translation as in,
No, I
English to a
agree.
different language, but it really is that you can have the early example is you can take a bunch of documents and you can tell that this is the format I wanted it, and it will translate all that information. And it does a pretty good job, right? It's never going to do 100% like you said, but even if it gets you to 80 to 90%, that's golden, right?
Right.
And so the fact is that you guys starting with communication, I think that's fantastic because the golden rule about communication, right? You have to create content that speaks to that audience.
That's
And
right.
if you have 10 audiences, you just don't have time to make those 10 different edits, right?
Yeah.
Now with
And
AI,
actually,
I can create one for the CMO, the CFO, the CPO, you name it.
that's right. Well,
Right.
and you're bringing up a really good point that like status is actually not at the speaker's mouth, but at the listener's ear.
Yes.
And some of the things that we're starting to think about is right now, status is very push oriented, right? We're going to assemble this on by this time on this day of the week, and
Yeah.
then send it out to people.
Yeah.
I think what we're trying to figure out is how do we flip this model to more about like, what do I need to hear from the organization? And this is not only for leaders, but for every individual. Like, what do I need to know and what do I need to do?
Yeah.
And so we've been starting to experiment with like, what would kind of a canonical place for me to go to understand something about the initiative, right? And so
Yes.
it could be something as simple as, all of the stuff around the initiative, like the release tracking issues, the
Well, yeah,
initiatives,
you
the
can have a
epics,
knowledge
all that
base,
stuff.
and then
Yeah,
you can just ask
that's right.
questions, right?
And so we leverage something called Copilot Spaces inside of GitHub an awful lot,
Okay.
which Copilot Spaces are kind of like custom GPTs is probably the way to think about it. But it's a
Okay.
way for us to assemble a bunch of sources of content, some instructions, and then allow
Is it
people
like
to ask
the
questions.
I think you guys call it knowledge in Copilot? Yes, is that
So
the
yeah,
same
there's
thing?
a knowledge bases was something that we used to have and is now being moved over to Spaces. But it's a lot like Gemini
Oh,
gems as well if you use
okay.
those inside of Google
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
environment. But it's and then same thing for agents inside of M365, right? Like
Yes.
there's this need for we have some set of kind of knowledge that we need people to have more ready
Yeah.
access to where they can ask Q&A about those
Yeah.
things, where they can actually take action on it. So another
Yeah.
interesting thing about Spaces is that because it's inside of GitHub, you can also automatically create issues based on the context. And so
Perfect.
we've been building these like workbenches essentially
Yeah.
for PMs to say like, I need to now and go and create like an announcement blog post from all of this context. And that goes in a very particular style in a type of
Yes.
issue. And so I think there's like a lot of benefit to using these types of tools. The question
I
becomes like, how
agree.
do you set these things up
agree.
for people is really interesting.
Yeah. I think you that makes sense. So knowledge spaces, or I think it's at one point it was even called notebook, or maybe I'm mistaken.
There's a bunch
Right.
of different terminology.
There is, and ChatGPT uses project,
Yeah,
Gemini uses something
that's
else.
right.
There's a whole bunch, but it really is a nice way to ring face your context or a context,
That's right.
sorry,
That's
right? And you can do a little bit of context engineering around it, and then you can
That's right.
actually literally give it out to the world.
Well, and that translation step that you're talking about is pretty interesting. Like I have a workflow now that does include like manual steps for me, but it's because I need to be able
Yeah.
to like edit as we translate. But it's this idea of like, we get a request from someone else inside the GitHub organization to do something. We will record that meeting, take that transcript, put it into Copilot, and then with basically the issue template for like intake of things into our system, I can say I want you to do the first draft of this intake based on everything we just talked about. Once that's created, we have another tool that we actually did open source called AI Assistant Comment Labeler, and it's not a very sexy name, but essentially what it does is it will take a bunch of different prompts and then run them against some issue that has just been created. And so in our case, it looks like, is this a well-formed request? Do we need more information? It will say, is this in alignment with our charter and our strategy? And the last one is there's something internally that's an alternative from us building something that they could use. And the thing that's super valuable about this is that it's kind of, rather than requiring the person that's being requested to do the work to do all the digging and like asking the follow-up questions, is that we're just like we're sharing that that kind of burden on both sides of the requester and the requestee. And
I agree. And
it's
then
also I was going to say, like, maybe the last thing that's really interesting about this too is that like the one that says, is this in alignment with our strategy or not, is much easier to get that news from a bot than it is from a human being to say like, no, this is not in alignment. But it kind of knows like we have strategic trade-offs that we're making all the time. And so it's able to just kind of like say, the bot doesn't think that this is actually in alignment, right?
Yeah.
And
No,
we can go back in and still answer questions and stuff, but it's really helpful.
I love that idea, because I tell you what, even when I was running product teams, having people working on things that were not aligned with my OKRs
Yeah.
was a pain. Because I mean, listen, I love the passion, I love the energy, but the fact is that they're focusing on something that is not going to help with the organization's strategic values.
That's right.
Is a big deal. And so even now, when we actually have clients, the first thing we say is, okay, you're gonna write this, you're gonna write all this stuff, but before you do anything, let's go and check if it's aligned with the OKRs or not. And it's so easy to do that now, right? You don't have to, it's just a matter of asking questions. By the way, we had Drew West join. Drew, thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, please put it in the chat. We're always happy to answer.
One thing that's kind of interesting about strategy is I'm kind of going to this mode that it is hard sometimes for leaders to write like a really good strategy document that really does encode the decision-making process of the senior leaders. Because like strategy is really about how do we make hard decisions easier for the team in some way, right? And so I guess I've kind of given up that leaders will be able to create these very, specific documents. I mean, we have lots of them, right? But they tend to be more polished, right? Like when we talk about having to publish inside of an organization, there's a lot of different people that end up helping create this like perfect document, but it's not necessarily a living document because it's not updated all the time. And it's not actually showing the hard trade-offs that are being made all the time. And
No.
so one of the things that I've started to do is, say in that Bloom tool that we talked about, we have actually a commenter that we keep on kind of taking the last couple sessions that the CPO or other senior leaders have talked about strategic thinking or the decisions that they've made, and
Yeah.
being able to use those transcripts to help generate like a live decision model of what is actually the current strategy based on how we're
Yes.
making hard decisions. I think
Yes.
is the future of where this goes, rather than this like very, very polished kind of like fluff document that tries to make everybody
Yeah.
happy. We should be
I
really
agree.
like basing it on how people make decisions in their day to
100%.
day.
And I think you make a good point too, because I think as humans, we are much more comfortable talking than writing,
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
right? And so if we have, and this is where AI makes a huge difference, is that if you can actually just quote unquote talk about what you're thinking and why you made certain
Yeah,
decisions and what trade-offs you had,
that's
right?
exactly right. Yeah.
You don't
Yeah, I
have
mean,
to then turn it into a nice looking document. You can
that's
have
right.
AI do it for you, or you can, like you said, you can actually have it put it into some kind of a chat bot and have the chat bot answer those questions, right?
And there's two patterns that I've started to see. One is like I create something and then I have, various prompts that are highly biased or kind of framed in a certain way to give me
Yeah.
feedback from a bunch of different viewpoints. But then the
Yes.
other side of that is that once I've created a bunch of content, can these like different prompts then generate kind of straw men things that could be an announcement blog post, like
Yes.
PRFAQs or something that people use all the time to try to talk about what is the end goal of this project. But it could also be extended to things like prototyping, right? Like if I'm creating a new project, what I actually want is I want to be able to get like 4 or 5 different prototypes from different viewpoints, kind of really digging
Yeah.
into the
100%.
assumptions or uncertainties. And then I give feedback and critique of that to be able to then shore up more of the context and the unsaid assumptions that I may have
Yes.
in some way.
Yes. I mean, there's no, I 100% agree. You know what? PMs have always struggled with the idea about diversity of point of view. I think now we're almost at the opposite end,
Yeah.
if you want to think about it, because I love the idea that you just talked about. And by the way, Drew, thanks for putting that. I think he likes the live decision model
Yeah.
versus static document that you mentioned as well. So I appreciate that.
Yeah.
But what you mentioned is a great one because using quote unquote different points of view, or, a fancier term is synthetic users,
Sure.
can help you figure out can help you look around corners,
Yeah.
right?
That's right.
Can help you figure out what you're not seeing or seeing something from a different point of view. And it will just
Yeah.
make your argument stronger.
That's right.
Um,
Yeah, and I think red
I'm,
teaming is one of those things that gets really hard for people to do because there's, or beneficial, but it's hard.
yeah,
And the reason why it's beneficial is that, yeah, you need to be questioning the framings that you use. I think as a PM, like we need to be able to like frame and reframe, zoom in and zoom out, and do all these different things that sometimes it's hard for us to always see what is a framing that could be helpful.
yeah,
And then also the fact is that we're worried about this like reputational risk, right? Is that if I get this feedback from someone that's a peer or a leader within my team,
yes,
what can go wrong is that will they think less of me because I gave them a less finished thought inside this document?
yeah,
And so I think there's like real value to getting harsher feedback kind of in a automated way because I have less risk of actually someone thinking less
yeah.
of me.
Well, you
And so
actually
I
make a
think that's
good
the other.
point. I mean, I know we've been talking about all the awesome things that you can do,
Yeah,
but at the end of that awesomeness is a human. And humans are not always rational, right? So there's some people who naturally gravitate towards us.
yeah,
Gravitate
yeah,
towards using AI.
yeah,
There's others who are a bit more, can range from anywhere from curiosity to, to high level of skepticism.
yeah.
I'm curious, as you've been rolling out these new agents and these new tools, what has been the reaction from the audience, right? How
Yeah.
have the engineers or the product managers or the designers, um, what surprised you? What has been their adoption pattern?
Yeah, I mean, I think like the engineers that I work with, right? So we have like a small team of about 4 engineers that work on the Synapse team, and I would say that there's a range of people that use a lot of AI tools in their development, and some people that don't use very much, right? Or when they do use them, they tend to be things like code review or other types of like double
Right.
checking type of software. And so I think there's a reason to have healthy skepticism about any of these things, right? Because what we don't want is we don't want to create a lot of like slop. Like in the case
Yeah.
of say reporting, we don't want like there to be floods of like AI reporting slop happening
Yes.
inside of our organization.
100%.
But the thing that is very interesting is kind of the way that people want to hold on to certain aspects of the work. And
Yes.
actually, but from back in 2017, I did a project for Google and PwC. It was focused on kind of field service operation, and
Okay.
we were targeting people like dispatchers that would try to get a field tech to go on site or something like that. And we did a bunch of prototypes of where we might use machine learning to do like prediction of a problem, prediction of a fix, coordination of schedules, even this idea of a chatbot that might like in a multi-person type of point of view start to include people that might be beneficial to this particular job. And we did a bunch of mapping of the feedback of our prototypes. We would try to map it on kind of like, did people understand or not based on the vertical, and then was there positive or negative sentiment on the horizontal.
Got it.
And so the things that were below the line were kind of like, we need to do a better job, like this is not helpful, we need to do a better job of messaging or enablement or something like that. In the positive, I knew what was going on, and I liked this, and I knew what was going on with this prediction stuff. That to us said it was mostly like the BS work that people didn't want to do, is the toilsome work that was part of the job. The stuff where they knew what was going on, they didn't like it. I first interpreted that as this was job security concern type of stuff. But after after kind of like revisiting it over a couple of years after that, I really started to see it as that these are the things that the human actually really enjoys doing as part of their job. It's part of the meaningful aspects of this. So while you could in some way automate away all of the communication with the client in this case, that's actually part of the meaningful work for this dispatcher, is that they're helping someone solve their problem. They're helping them feel better about the fact
It
that
gives them
something bad is
value.
happening.
It's a sense of purpose, right? And
That's
it's
right.
a sense of pride. So
That's right. And so I think that's super valuable, and I think that is still true for how do we discern what should be a human thing and what should be a machine thing, and how do we get the best of both worlds and not the worst of both worlds.
And to that point, it changes by individual, right? So you may love writing communication emails.
Yeah.
I may not. And that's just one task. There's hundreds of tasks that a PM does.
Totally. I mean,
figure it out,
even for my team, right? Like we have to justify the funding of our team, right? And that's a type of document that I really don't enjoy writing. But I've gotten a huge amount of benefit in being able to look at like examples from other teams, get feedback on what's clear or not clear.
And then mimic it.
That's right. And so that's been a big help, because I think I definitely get writer's block when it comes to certain types of things that I don't enjoy doing. And so, but there's the other side of it, is that like, when I am doing kind of like working on, say, more speculative writing, more prototyping, I still use these tools to help benefit me in an awful lot of ways.
I actually think that, I think it's both, right? I see what I see with my clients is both. Is number one is AI can help you level up in areas that you just don't enjoy doing.
Yeah.
Right.
That's right.
So it can get you to the baseline.
Yeah, that's right. That's Ethan Mollick's kind of research about that, right?
Yes. And then the second one I see, which I think most people don't appreciate, but I think it's becoming more and more apparent, is that for things that you really enjoy doing, it can actually 10x your ability. And so the difference between you and the baseline,
that's right,
becomes much wider, right?
Yeah.
So you can be, I call it like, it can help you become more you. So number one, you don't have the burden or the toil of the baseline task, right?
That's right.
And if you really enjoy prototyping, oh my God, you're like, okay, this is heaven because I don't have to worry about this. You enjoy doing, custom interviews and customer journeys and so on and so forth. You can do that, right?
That's right.
We just finished an engagement with a client in a large bank, and one of the PMs, she's like, I just love journey mapping, right? She takes all of these very complex engineering documents, and she's like, I got to figure out where the system fits in, where the user fits in, where all of these different actors fit in. And, it's something I enjoy doing, but it takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
Now, she's like, I can do this much faster, and more importantly, I can do it much better than what I was before, because I know I know what good looks like, and I know what really good looks like.
That's right.
Right?
That's right.
And so for her, it's a superpower.
Yeah. And if you ever
And
feel
so
blocked, like even if you really enjoy something, there are times where like trying to figure out what is, like I have a bunch of stuff, but I need to like collect my thoughts. I need help in
yeah,
actually like pulling it into something that is just like a very simple, single kind of
yeah,
provocation in some way. Being able to get that type of help to organize your thinking as well, I've found to be really
100%.
beneficial.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, I use it as I'm sure you do the same. I don't think so. I don't know how my day would be if I did not use AI.
Well,
It
it's
has
made writing
become
for me a lot easier too, because to your point, I think I'm a much better kind of public speaker than
yeah,
than I feel like I am a writer. And so
yeah,
being able to just kind of get everything out of my head in some way, but then also provide like an outline and then start to get like pieces of this thing
yeah,
to be able to communicate a thought, I
yeah.
think ends up like
Well,
helping
I
me
mean, you
organize
make a
things so
very
much
good
better.
point. So even in writing, yes, AI can write something for you.
Yeah.
You ask AI a question. Here's the benefit and drawback of AI. Like
Yeah.
you ask AI a question, it will answer.
Yes.
It doesn't matter what question you ask, it's going to
Yeah.
answer.
Yeah.
Um, but is it a good answer?
Yeah. That's right.
Really depends on it. So you can say, I want to write a blog about X, Y, and Z. I'm like, yes, it will write a blog about it. Is it a great blog? Probably not, right? It's your insights that you put in and say, no, I want to talk about these three
That's
things.
right.
And
That's right.
here's the focus. Here's the audience. Here are the key takeaways. That thinking you have to do on your own,
Yeah. That's right.
right?
That's right.
And that's
Yeah.
when you use AI to then help you write. And I think most people miss that piece. Um,
Yeah.
I am so I know we're almost out of time and I want to be
Sure.
respectful. Two questions, right? As you're doing these things, as you're building these agents, what has been some of the challenges you faced so far? I know we talked about, humans receiving or using
Yeah.
these applications. Are there any other challenges that you've come across?
I mean, I think like one of the things that's really tough right now is the way that we actually integrate agents into the way that like the places that people are actually doing the work.
Yeah,
So like we have the GitHub graph is like a very important set of information that includes code, issues, PRs, like a bunch of stuff about the way that the work is being done for the engineering side of the world usually. But there's like a whole nother world that is out there that is like in Google Docs, in Zoom transcripts, and
yeah,
stuff like that
yeah.
that is not
A
actually
lot of
included in those
unstructured
places.
data all over the
Yeah,
place. Yeah,
that's right. And so I think like how do we bring some of these things like we've done some experiments inside of kickoff meetings for our team where we'll use spaces or other types of
yeah,
agents that will try to pull the context, but it's still there's like these paper cuts of like trying to get a transcript live out of Zoom. You have to like start live transcript and then save it as a
yes,
text file and then copy and paste that, and then once we get like a response from the space we have to read it together, and so it's just like very awkward. And so we've been doing some experiments with like what would a meeting screen look like for agents to be involved in the
yeah,
actual meeting between a bunch of people during a kickoff. And it's not that they speak up randomly, by the way. Like you don't want them actually speaking up, but what you do want them to do is you want them to kind of like add maybe interventions or other
yeah,
ideas that are happening. You want them to help you assemble plans to be able to confirm them. You want them to automatically start to do prototyping. And so we're starting to do thinking around that, because what we really need to do is GitHub is very engineering focused, right? And we're
yeah,
starting to get to this point that we're like, all this additional context is actually inside of the cross-functional teams and the way they do their work. And
yes,
this is why like not a lot of people, as much as we want to do like spec driven development where there's like markdown files and specs and stuff like that, the reality is that like that's not a very friendly place for collaboration, right? You can do PRs and you can do comments on PRs and stuff like that, but like Google Docs, even though it is not great, right? And same thing for Word, even though it's not
yeah,
great for async collaboration, is probably the best thing we have
yes.
basically.
So
And
far,
other for async, right, so far,
yeah,
right? And so I think that's the thing that I think we're really challenged with, is that for the places where we're really building this kind of comprehensive context around what is the team
yeah,
doing, it's scattered in a bunch of places. It's very unstructured, and it's okay. It's
yeah,
unstructured. I mean, I guess like my belief is that the real value of like true agentive technology is things that are kind of like operating all the time, rather than kind of like being triggered off of human action in some way.
yeah.
Actually, everything is triggered off of human action, but I will not be pedantic about this, right? Like, but
It
this
just
idea of
depends on
like,
how you figure how
yeah,
you define trigger.
that's right, that's right.
Yeah,
And so I do think there's something really interesting about how we have kind of these knowledge bases a lot of the time inside of siloed systems. And
Mm,
so GitHub Graph is not a siloed system. There's a lot of stuff there, but there's now also these other places that there's context. And so I do wonder if it's part of the agent's job is to continuously try to find rich these graphs of knowledge that we have
yeah.
in some way. And so, like, one of the things we're trying to figure out right now is how do we do a better job of linking release tracking issues to customer feedback issues? And
Yes.
there's a lot of things that go into this because there's lots of both of those things. How do we make sure that the way the customer is talking about something is the same way that we would talk
I
about it
agree.
inside of a release
Yeah,
tracking
yeah.
issue?
I agree.
And so that is like a huge problem. But I think that is the future of this, is that those agents going around and continuously like refining and enriching these graphs of knowledge, and looking at the behavior of people to see what is actually valuable or important, right? So that idea of like a CPO or a senior product leader talking about something shows that there's value there, right? That
Mm,
shows that that's important. And so I think being able to do a better job of that, I think, is the future of a lot of this type of knowledge work, is actually creating more enriched graphs and having agents help assist us in doing that,
yes.
essentially.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think people are still just getting their heads wrapped around how to use AI and large language
Yeah,
models.
totally.
I think the idea about having agents constantly listening in and doing things for you, um, I mean, we're getting there.
Yeah,
There's no, I mean, we use it. I mean, we use agents all the time. We just don't call them agents.
yeah, that's right. That's right.
Right?
Yeah.
When
I mean,
you're
and
doing
there's,
Zoom transcript, that's some kind of an agent running in the
yeah,
background
that's right.
doing a transcription
Well,
for you. So,
and
it's just,
this is the problem, that because we don't have like a more enriched graph of information. Like, there was a really interesting post that Bruce Schneier just did, who's like a security expert, and he was talking about how the like meeting summarization technologies can be leveraged in certain ways that are both positive and negative. So, like, for
yes.
example, if we're having this meeting transcribed right now, if I use highly specific language like the action item for Mustafa is X, Y, and Z,
Yes.
it will be automatically recorded as such in the summary,
Yes.
even if you disagree with that.
Yes.
Right?
I
And
agree.
so,
Yeah.
so there's like some interesting things that we need to deal with. Like, if we had a
Well,
better idea of
actually,
what the team is working on,
yeah.
then we
This
would
is
be able
actually a
to do a
great
better job.
this is a great segue because I think that comes back to one of the things that most people have a hard time is how
Mm.
can you trust the output?
Yeah, that's right.
Your meeting segment, sorry, the action item example is perfect, right? You and I can say this is an action item, and then you can disagree with me for the rest of the call. But yet the AI will take that down as an action item. And if I was not part of that call,
Yeah, that's right.
how would I know?
Yeah.
Right?
Well, and
And
also, is
so
that action item one that is very important? Because, like, just because we can transcribe every single action item that comes up in a meeting, it
so
doesn't mean
that
that we
yeah.
should do every single one, right? And
No.
it also
And
means we
and
should
so
remember
yeah,
every single one.
100%.
Um, yeah.
But it talks to the larger issue about like how much can I trust
Hmm.
this stuff? Right.
Yeah,
So even going
that's right.
back to the strategy document that you talked about, like leaders can put these live living documents in strategy and you can
Yeah.
ask a question. There is a little bit of translation happening between what the leader said and what's being
Yeah.
presented to you,
Yep.
as a consumer of that content. Um, which comes back to one of the reasons why I think people are skeptical or
Hmm.
people are,
Yeah.
depending on the range. How can you trust the output
Hmm.
or the reliability of some of these things? Or how do we engineer it in such a way that we can build
Yeah.
more reliability into it?
Yeah. I mean, I think there's something very interesting about the fact that one is like that output document that is like, here's the living strategy. It should still be reviewed by people, right? We should have probably other agents that are also checking it for, like, is there accuracy based on what was said here and what is actually being worked on,
Right.
right? But there's another side of this too, which is that sometimes these types of prompts or agents can bring up something that
Maybe
we
not
maybe
thought
don't
about.
want
Yeah.
to talk about. Yeah.
Right.
So, like, for example, I've created like what I'll call a proxy for my CPO based on some of the
Yeah.
discussions he's
That's
had. I've
perfect.
also created one for myself, by the way.
Perfect.
And for mine, what I did is that it will respond how Chris might think about this, how Chris might talk about it. But I made it specifically also say where is a blind spot I might have based
Yeah.
on my leadership persona. And it hurt a little bit to see some of these blind spots, because I'm like, yeah, I definitely would be that is a blind spot for me. So the question becomes, like, when we start to build these like profiles of people about what they care about, what they don't care about, like, how much should they be allowed to edit those things, right? So
Yeah.
based on my leadership persona, should I be allowed to edit my blind spots or not, right? Should that be something that is done by someone else? Is that like someone like my manager or my
Yeah.
team, like a 360 point of view? And I think there's a lot of things that as we will be able to collect and collate and translate this type of stuff from meetings, that usually it's humans doing sense making. How do we allow for this type of thing to include the things that also are unsaid that we might find harder to deal with? And so,
I mean, your answer is the answer, because I think the things you're talking about, and by the way, we have another comment from a LinkedIn user. They like the idea about, yes, automatic distillation is hard. That's why copy pasting into Claude, so you can control context, helps, right? 100% agree. But I think you've kind of mentioned, like, these are the things that I tell my clients too. Is like, number one is you can't get away from human review. Like, there's no way, right? You just don't, right? And if you think that AI is going to come and give you the right answer all the time, you're going to be sadly disappointed.
That's right.
But it doesn't have to stop with human reviews, right? What you talked about is digital proxies of you, your manager, I mean, your whole team, right? I have digital proxies built for everything. I have a digital proxy, for, believe it or not, for my company. Because then I can run it by and say, okay, if I'm going to do this, what's the tax implications, and so on. Right? But your review plus diversity of thoughts from different type of personas is how you test and validate the results or the output. Right?
Well, I think like we're so heavily dependent on LLMs right now, or we mostly, when we talk about AI, we're talking about LLMs, which is a particular type of like compression and translation technology. But there are other things, like I do wonder, like, to really understand where resources are being applied. I think there's something more akin to kind of clustering of interactions, communication flows, which are slightly different types of models than just LLMs, right? And so I think this is why, like, the idea is that not everything is just calculated through LLMs. There's actually, like, still the idea of, like, actual prediction systems that might be beneficial. There's still the human aspect of decision making. There's this idea of, like, collation of thought. Like, these are all different ways to do things that I think as we start to bring them closer together, we start to use these different types of things. I think we get to a better outcome rather than a worse one. But to your point, like, you cannot just assume that everything that comes out of an LLM is correct. Now, I think we are reducing hallucinations, by the way. Like, in our reporting stuff, hallucinations are not that bad in our compression.
I actually like
stuff, right?
I like hallucinations, because hallucinations is just another form of creativity.
I agree. Right? Like, the idea of two things being mixed together in a surprising way to a human, it's still the human that decides, though, whether it is creative or not.
Argue. Yes. But that, to me, is what comes back to the final point, is that you have to put a human in the loop somewhere or the other. Right?
Well, there always is, by the way. I think that this idea of human in the loop as, like, a way to do things, the truth is that if there is not a human in the loop, you're drawing your system boundary wrong, is basically what I would say. And so, like, and actually I would argue that it's not one human in the loop, but usually it's many different types
multiple
of humans
in the loop.
Because
and that
we
multiple
need to think about
humans have a digital proxy team that they can pull on to even further give a diverse perspective. Chris, this has been awesome. And like anything else, this I love the conversation. You and I can talk about this till the cows come home. We're both very passionate about this. I would love to, if you're up for it, to have you back maybe about a year from now and figure out how else you go. Because I guarantee you, well, maybe a year's too long, maybe 6 months.
Exactly. A year, everything's going to be different.
A year is everything. I'm just thinking, like, oh my God, a year. It's like in 6 months, things have changed. Maybe we'll be back in 6 months. I would love to figure out what's going on, what is GitHub doing, and how your thinking has changed or enhanced.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I'd be happy to. Thank you for having me. And, for everybody else too, I'd love to connect on LinkedIn. If you try any of these things, or if you're experimenting with them, I'd always love to hear about it, because I learn from talking to other people that are kind of struggling through this stuff too.
100%. Please connect with Chris. I would love for you to connect with me too, because we're passionate about this topic. Anyway, thank you, Chris. This has been great.
Thank you.